I want to clarify a misconception that has been going around in the Monster Hunter community for a while now and is being spread innocently enough by people who haven't really been playing Monster Hunter that long at all and who haven't really experienced most of the history of the game. And it's the idea that the next version of Monster Hunter is going to be Monster Hunter 6. So yeah, you've heard this everywhere. And it's even written down in some quote-unquote authoritative websites. And there is, thanks to a conversation I had on the Discord the other night, there is a interview with a producer from Capcom who worked on Monster Hunter World. And I'm not sure if this is translated from Japanese or not, but there's a quote from a producer where the producer seems to imply that World was supposed to be Monster Hunter 5, or that they considered it to be the fifth mainline game or the fifth generational game. And if you read the actual quote, it doesn't really imply that at all. We'll get to that. But I just want to clarify this for everyone right now. We are currently playing Generation 7 or Version 7 or the seventh mainline title in the Monster Hunter series. However you want to say it, Monster Hunter Rise is the seventh mainline game. If you go to Wikipedia, it claims that Generations is a spin-off and therefore not really Monster Hunter 5 in spirit. Wikipedia claims that the developers say that, but they don't actually give a citation for that claim. There's a website called fandom.com, and they claim that Generations is a fourth generation title and that World and Rise are fifth generation. However, they don't cite any source for that claim either. And so are they just making that up? I don't know. Is it because 4U and Generations were both on the same platform, even though Generations was built for Switch as well? If that's the case, then why would they claim World and Rise are the same generation when World was designed essentially for PlayStation 4 and Rise was essentially designed for Switch? They don't even use the same game engine. So another random theory floating around that I've heard in conversations is that since Generations and Rise were made by a different development team, they aren't mainline games. And that's very questionable. That's highly questionable. We don't even have accurate information on who was part of the development teams for these games. So we can't even prove or disprove that claim. So all of these theories are easily proven wrong, or at least easily shown that there's no evidence for them. So who is promoting this idea of the next Monster Hunter title being called Monster Hunter 6 or being 6th generation? I don't need to tell you. You've probably already seen their videos on it. Most of the major Monster Hunter channels on YouTube refer to the next version of Monster Hunter as Monster Hunter 6. It's surprising, really, considering how much they shill for Capcom. You'd think that they would make an effort to get things right. Here's the thing. Capcom stopped numbering the titles of the games, but that doesn't mean we get to just make things up. Monster Hunter Generations is not a quote-unquote fourth generation title. It is a completely new game. It made massive changes to gameplay and features, yet it still plays just like a mainline game with the same core features and gameplay loop. So it's neither a spin-off nor is it more of the same as 4U. And if you haven't played 4U and or Generations, then you wouldn't realize that. You will just read an article somewhere or see a clipping somewhere or a translated interview, and you'll be like, oh yeah, okay, we'll just call them both fourth generation. You have to really understand the changes that Generations made to understand that it is Monster Hunter 5. For those of you who haven't played Generations extensively or 4U extensively, so you don't have a frame of reference to compare, let me give you an example. Generations is as different from 4U as Rise is from 4U. And in fact, Generations is probably more different from 4U than Rise is from 4U. If you think Switch skills are an insane layer of complexity, check out Generations and the Hunter arts. Those did not exist in 4U. And I would argue that Hunter arts and hunting styles are significantly more complicated than what we have in Rise. So that's Generations. That's, in my mind, the fifth mainline game, spiritually, technically, whatever, Monster Hunter 5. It's the height of conceit to not consider this the fifth Monster Hunter mainline game. Let's talk about World. Now we're on to the sixth mainline game. Again, same gameplay loop as all the other mainline games. It takes up the bulk of the development team's efforts and is clearly intended as the next flagship Monster Hunter title. No one disputes that. So World, definitely a mainline game, definitely the next iteration. And then we have Rise. Why would anybody consider this the same generation as World? It comes out long after World was completed. It has, again, radical new features, yet the same core gameplay loop. Trying to justify it by saying, well, it's a different platform, is just laughable. The main Monster Hunter title has jumped platforms so many times. Back in the day, it was harder to release games cross-platform, so Capcom would target the platform that they believed would have the biggest install base by the time of the game's release, with priority on the Japanese market. By the time World was coming up, the platform landscape looked a lot different. Xbox, PlayStation 4, and PC were essentially the same hardware, same CPU, same GPU. So cross-platform was suddenly much easier. Switch was just getting off the ground, and Generations Ultimate was on that platform anyway. Capcom did not have a modern game engine developed for the Switch yet, so World was not an option for porting to that platform. Since the launch of World, the Switch has seen a massive success. When World launched, there was not a very large Switch install base, so it didn't make any sense to even think about porting World to Switch. But Capcom recognized in those subsequent couple of years that the Switch platform was exploding, growing astronomically, and Capcom saw they needed another title on that platform. So they got their shit together, they got their new game engine running properly on it, and they made plans for their next title. It turns out this new title would not only be released on Switch, but also on PC. Although the PC version did have a bit of a delay, they clearly had decided to make Rise multi-platform from the beginning. And since every PlayStation and Xbox since the last generation have been PC hardware, it's really easy for them to target those platforms too. So Rise isn't a spin-off. It isn't in the same generation as World because it came out long after World did. It uses a completely different engine from World, and it adds so many new features that World doesn't have. It feels different. It looks different. It is a generational improvement. And yes, it's multi-platform, so it's not just some spin-off version for a handheld. So Rise now becomes the seventh mainline game in the series, which means if these games had continued to be numbered, Rise would be titled Monster Hunter 7. Now, why did Capcom stop numbering the titles? Why did they drop the numbering scheme for the name? My guess is the marketing department figured it would make more sense to give them proper names in order to make them all more marketable. After all, if the current version is 6 and version 7 is coming out in 6 months, a significant number of people will just wait for 7 and not bother to purchase 6. They think 7 is coming out, it's newer, it has a bigger number, it's a newer revision, I'll just play the newer, better one instead. And in fact, the quote that Blade 2 posted on the Discord supports that. The producer is saying, if we called World Monster Hunter 5, then it says Monster Hunters 1 through 4 would be out there and people would feel a certain kind of pressure to catch up on the existing games. And it says that's going to take a long time. They may think, maybe I shouldn't bother. Or they just feel like, hey, it's not for me. The train has left the station on this series. And then he says, so by calling it Monster Hunter World, we're telling people it doesn't matter how much Monster Hunter familiarity you have. This is your ultimate jumping in point to the series. So this is basically a marketing tactic. He's confirming that it's about marketing. And so you have the type of people who feel, well, all right, 5, 6, 7, whatever it is. Now he said 5 because it looks like the journalist said, why didn't you call it Monster Hunter 5? So his response, and again, I don't know if this is translated, if he actually said the phrase Monster Hunter 5. So you have some people who feel, all right, 5's coming out, 7's coming out, whatever the number. I've got to play the older games so that I am familiar with the storyline all the way through. And then there are other people who think, well, 6 is out now and 7's coming out in 6 months. They just announced it. I'm not going to bother with 6 because 7's going to be a better version anyway, so I'll just buy that. So dropping the numbers means you now have these distinct, unique, individual games that people can experience separate from the others. And so they're more likely to play more than one of the games. And they're more likely to buy into the series as a whole if they've never played any of them. Now, Capcom has a history of multiple Monster Hunter titles across various platforms. It's a bit of a mess. But one thing that's clear is that we are currently playing the 7th mainline version of Monster Hunter. And so the next Monster Hunter title to be released will be the 8th one, thus Monster Hunter 8. So what does Capcom have in store for us for Monster Hunter 8? I'm going to save that for another video. So tell me in the comments what you think about this situation. If you've got any evidence that suggests or that definitively demonstrates that Capcom thinks of World as the 5th mainline game rather than Generations, or that World and Rise are somehow the same generation of Monster Hunter, put that in the comments. Let's talk about it. And I'll do a follow-up video on it. If you guys have the receipts, I'll go over them. I'll check it out. But until somebody shows me something more than insinuation or unsubstantiated, uncited claims, next version's Monster Hunter 8, and that's what I'll be calling it. You guys can call it whatever you want. It doesn't matter. It's going to be awesome anyway. We're all going to play it anyway. But let's not ignore the history of the series. Let's not pretend like Generations was just an afterthought. Likewise with Rise. Let's not pretend that World is this amazing game and Rise is just this kind of this little spin-off for the Switch. Because history doesn't support that. The evidence doesn't support it. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Let me know what you think in the comments. What version of Monster Hunter is coming out next?